You're listening to Rappahannock Radio. This program is supported in part by a grant from the Claudia Mitchell Fund. Views and opinions expressed in the following interview do not represent Rappahannock Association for Arts and Community or its board.
Seems ridiculous that I would waste so much time on this, when all they wonder, all that anyone ever wonders. All that anyone ever wonders is, am I in the right place? Am I in the right space? Did I read the signs right? Am I in the right place? Am I in the right space and time? Or am I losing my mind? Am I in the right place? Am I in the right space? Am I losing my mind? Maybe this time I shall wonder. I shall wonder a little bit less and wonder some more.
And good afternoon.
Noel Putnam. What is Noel short for?
Oliver.
Oliver?
It's the English nickname for Oliver. Like Ned is to Edward.
Okay.
You take the first syllable and put an N in front of it, and it's really a diminutive.
Okay. I always love nicknames for that reason.
Yeah.
I find them fascinating how people end up with nicknames from their original name. How did you come to be a blacksmith?
Well, I was raised in northwestern Connecticut, and my family had my mother really made friends with some high caliber artists, and they were just my parents' friends. So I've always been exposed to art, music, writing, painting, sculpture. When I found out who these people were in college or afterwards, there was no way I was going to become an artist. These people were
you considered out of your league.
Yeah, way out of my league. So I did something safe. I became a school teacher. And I was a school teacher for 14 years. And when I quit, I knew I wanted to work with my hands as well as my head. And having been raised on a farm, that was pretty second nature to me. But then I wanted to do something more. And I had a book on blacksmithing that I had bought for my students at school just to show them the breadth of what was possible. And I had it with me, and I opened it one day. I was tired of fixing up the farm. Had the wrong kind of coal, the wrong stone, the wrong hammer. But I had an anvil, and I had a little forge. And I started a fire, put a piece of metal in it, hit it, and it moved. And that was it. You could heat and actually move metal. So I cashed in all my savings and taught myself to be a blacksmith out of that book, and going around and asking lots of questions. And I'm in my 48th year of being a blacksmith.
48th year?
Yeah.
So it's interesting when you're describing this to me, it's almost like you're the first man to ever do blacksmithing. The notion of you had an anvil and you hit the metal and it moved.
Yeah.
It's like, can you imagine what it was like for the first person who discovered that?
No. I mean, I can only speak for myself on that. But,
Yeah.
It's, I think a lot of people get mesmerized that you can take a material like iron, unforgiving, and almost make it do your bidding.
I love the wording.
Yeah, almost. I have a lot of scraps around you if you look around.
Yes, we are here in the forge, and it's absolutely, well, it's stunning that we have this huge, what do you call this behind you? We're on radio, so we have to, I have to be more descriptive.
It's a block and tackle that came off a tugboat.
And you went and got it from this tugboat?
I know I got it from an antique store.
Okay.
And because I needed to move heavy stuff. So I have I think it's a 3/4 inch hawser on it. And it's attached to the roof with a long iron beam that goes down there to spread the weight. And so I can lift with that what I couldn't do with myself.
Okay. I see it. Yeah, I see the purpose of it. I want to ask you, I want to go back a little bit. And so why did you feel like those artists were out of your league?
Well, they were international artists. They've had training. They had international venues.
But you were like rubbing shoulders with them as a child.
Well, I was rubbing shoulders at 10 years old, 14 years old. For one of them, for the mother of one of them, when I was a teenager, I was a model because I had long legs like a giraffe, and she liked that. And
I did not expect to come to an interview with a blacksmith and have him start off saying he was a model. So you're immortalized in the art. There.
Well, I don't know because I don't know where her drawings or paintings went. But the other ones were like, the one that comes right to mind is Alexander Calder. Mm-hmm. And I've been very much influenced by his work and by his demeanor, and all of them. They were so open, You think of artists I thought of artists often as people who are often on a pedestal.
Superior.
Superior in some way. Not necessarily as people, but as talents and being able to take their ideas and make them visible in some way. Malcolm Cowley was an author. He edited the New Republic magazine for years. And when I'd greet him at the door, he'd always tousle my hair and say, "Did you see the elephant down by the barn?"
Outlandish.
Yes, exactly, completely outlandish. And so they were wonderful that way. And then as I got older, I realized these are wonderful people. I mean, and they're also important people in what they visualize and then express for us to see, to enjoy, to search, to wonder about.
Right.
And it seemed inapproachable.
What do you think about the, I don't know the origin of it, but people often say those who can't do teach.
Well, I was one of those for a long time. I taught school, senior high school.
But that's such an important role as well. I mean, as you know, it's an extremely important role, especially now.
I disagree completely with the position.
But there's something to it, because in some way you kind of identified with it.
You have to be a jack of all trades at the high school. Well, maybe at any level, but I taught at senior high. So 1 minute you're a counselor, 1 minute you're a coach, 1 minute you're holding them in their arms because they're crying or they're homesick. I taught...
Where did you teach?
I taught histories, various kinds of history. Archaeology. I taught a little bit of... I ran a program for Native American students in New England schools. And our particular school had American Indians, black students, white students, a number of Oriental students, some African students. We were really a mixed community. And so to make it possible for those people to fit into the community, you have to open your view. For a Native American, for example, if you come from North Dakota, South Dakota, there is no limit to your horizon, you see. And you come to New England, and it's sort of closed in.
It's boxed in.
Yeah, you're boxed in. And of course the church, whatever the church is on the highest hill in the community. But theirs is the sky, the world, the earth. So how do you make a place where they can thrive even though they come from a different society? And that's less true among whites, but certainly true among Africans or people who come from Orient. So you become a jack of all trades. You're a dorm person, you're a coach, you're a teacher, you're a disciplinarian, you're all kinds of things. You're in loco parentis.
What kept you, that's a long time to teach, and the burnout rate for teachers
You got it?
is quite high. But you stuck in there for a while. I mean, is that because you know how essential the work is? I mean,
I love the work.
Yeah.
But
it's taxing. It takes a toll on not only your brain, your energy, but your psyche. I mean, because
Definitely.
So I only taught for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And just in those couple of years, I mean, you get so attached to
the kids
and to their futures, and to, you're on the outside, of their lives, so to speak. You're involved, but I mean, you have no, I guess it's true with any individual. You have no, you're trying to be a compass to them. You're trying to help them navigate, but at the same time, the choice is up to the individual. And that can be heartbreaking sometimes when you see from an outside perspective, and you can almost pinpoint what's, going right or going wrong in someone's life, and then you have no control over that. I mean, I think.
Well, we all have free will.
Right.
And what we do with it is our choice. And there's also karma.
Right.
So...
Zen and the art of...
Yeah, exactly. Motorcycle maintenance or...
blacksmithing.
Yeah, blacksmithing, yeah. But I'm still in touch with, probably 15 or 20 of my students from 50 years ago.
That's excellent. But so how fascinating is it that you turn to something where...
I don't see anybody.
You don't see anybody, but also you do have a sense of control. I mean, like you said, this metal is doing your bidding. Like it's so introspective, and yet so. I mean, you're also pouring your soul into these pieces for. I mean, you talked about earlier about being a model, and I said you've been immortalized in art. You are immortalizing yourself in your own art.
Well, it will be here for some time.
Yeah. So make it good, right?
Yeah, your name's on it, you know. You don't get to send out schlock.
I don't think you do that. But obviously there was a learning curve. I mean, you said you had the wrong coal. What does that mean? You have the wrong coal?
Well, coal comes in a number of forms depending on how much it's been squished by the earth.
Okay.
So generally you have 3 recognizable types, but each of those categories has many layers within it. So you have hard coal, which is generally used in furnaces to heat houses. It burns very slowly. It keeps a flame, and it's a warm heat. It's a very nice, but you can't get it hot enough to work iron.
But so you don't want it too hot, but you want it.
Yeah. So then you have soft coal, which is what I use. And soft coal, it burns about 1,200 degrees, but when I put a blast of air on it, it will burn up to 3,000 degrees, depending on the purity of the coal.
And what's the optimal, or does it depend on what you're doing?
It depends on what you're doing. But I usually start work at around 2,000 degrees.
Wow. And in this heat?
Yes, in this heat.
How do you stay cool?
Well, I had the fans on.
Yes.
And the building is built in, it's earth bermed on 1.5 sides.
Okay.
So it's pretty cool in the morning. So I try to get here when it's still cool. And at my age now, I stop when it gets too hot. Oh.
Good choice. Did you not used to? You just...
Oh, no, I would bowl my way through. Yeah.
But now you know better, right?
One hopes.
Or did you used to work at night, or do you sometimes work? No. Never worked at night?
No. I've always felt, if you can't get it done in a normal day, if you can't get it done in a normal week, why kill yourself afterwards? You're going to take yourself away from your family or from the diversions that you need in order to be successful at what you're at. So I generally worked 8 hours, of which probably 6 were productive hours, because you got to answer the phone, you got to, a lot of stuff cuts into your day, but say 6 hours at the anvil at the max. And you've just got to gear your day so you can get through it in a regular fashion, and there's something less to view when you come home.
Sounds like you've got a good balance worked out.
Well, finally.
Did it not? Because, you mentioned, I guess, everyone has to find that balance, not only if they're working for themselves, but with work in general, making sure that you're giving the project its due time, but also yourself.
Exactly.
And your family. So, you said finally, you finally got to that balance.
Yeah.
When you started as a blacksmith, what was going on in the world of blacksmithing?
I picked up a hammer, a stone hammer, wrong kind of hammer, in the fall of 1972.
Okay.
So we had come through the decade of the 60s, Vietnam War, drugs coming onto campus, student unrest, a series of assassinations in our country. It was an unsettling time, a scary time sometimes.
Not so much unlike the time we're in now.
Well, it's different now. It's a different kind of scariness. because of my upbringing and who I am, and probably also the time that I came to my majority. I grew up with Franklin Delano Roosevelt. I was born in 1934, so he'd just been in office 2 years.
I think the blacksmithing is keeping like the human growth hormone in you at its highest level, because I would never have guessed that you were born then. That's you look great.
Thank you. I have a cane here.
Continue. I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's all right.
But
and my parents were quite liberal. And I am quite liberal now. I call myself a liberal Democrat, if not a socialist. I'm not someplace in there. And I think the country has gone off track. I don't know how political you want me to get, but being a history teacher, I think I don't know what game the Republican Party is playing now, but either they don't know their history or they don't understand the history. And I think the events of the last 4 years particularly show the dire position that we are in, compounded by the COVID pandemic.
right.
But that has been happening for a long time. Certainly since the Hayes-Tilden election, 1972, when the Republican Party was staunchly behind the freeing of the blacks, slavery, and the constitutional amendments. And then all of a sudden, because they were losing power, they switched. And so they became enemies of freedom, really. Enemies of freedom for everybody. And enshrined laws to make it possible to keep people in bondage, economic bondage. And that's what's playing out today, that finally a number of more people have woken up to know how the economic slavery, literally, has taken shape under Republican administrations, Republican presidents. We have a very serious divide in this country, and I don't know what's going to happen when we start misusing our history, misunderstanding it, not teaching it, and then finally lying about it.
Something will come of this. Are you afraid of loving? If you're thinking something will come of this, are you afraid of falling? If you think you're something in all of this, are you afraid trying? If you think you're something in all of this, are you afraid of failing? I know you can fight the fear. I know you can break the chain. I know you can fight the fear. I know you can beat the pain. If you're thinking something will come of this, are you afraid of staying? If you're thinking something will come of this, are you afraid of leaving? If you think there's something to all of this, are you afraid of caring? something to all of this. Are you afraid of believing? I know you can fight the fear. Yeah, I know you can break the chain. I know you can fight the fear. I know you can beat the pain. I know you can. No, you can. I know 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 you can.
Change is often, it's scary, and we don't handle it well because we're used to the familiar. How come I can't always have my bread or as toast in the morning?
Right.
Well, we just happen to run out of bread, and literally, so the president goes to Tulsa and magnifies the story of the massacre in Tulsa. That's a good thing. More people know about it now. Whether it will create change, I don't know. But
What do you think creates change for the positive?
positive change, knowledge,
So being
science.
you were a part of a private school,
It was a private school.
how do you feel like, so what role does the private school have in comparison to the public school system? What kind of things can happen at the level of a private school?
Well, everybody has to pass American history, to graduate, so there are certain things. But we didn't have the SOLs, for example.
What do you feel about the SOLs?
I think they're terrible.
I think I have to agree.
I think to have a multiple choice test with one answer right
Discredits reality.
Yeah, it's impossible. So, one example. My daughter went to school, a private school, but still, she had to pass tests on it. So the question is, which man is working? Shows a man, that's the question. And then it shows 4 or 5 people. One's sawing a plank, one's digging a ditch, one's driving a big truck, and one's sitting in the armchair reading. So she chose the person in the armchair reading because that's what she always saw me
Doing
preparing for class, and that was my work. She got it wrong. Huh?
It's subjective.
Yeah. So I think to teach critical thinking, to throw lots of ideas out there. A good teacher, I think, is one who presents problems and then is there to provide a step when it gets too difficult.
Right. You're there as a support system.
Yeah. Come on, Johnny or Mary or so on. Have you thought of this? Have you
Right.
sort of move them through the jungle? Because learning is a jungle.
Right. And a good teacher also teaches to the student, not to the curriculum per se. It is your
You're-
job to take the curriculum and bend it to your will.
Yeah, run with it.
And make sure that, you are communicating with each student on the level that they need, which is very hard to do.
Very difficult to do.
Yeah.
I had a class of 12 students in a European history. 12 students is unheard of in a high school.
Right.
And I had 12 different syllabi for those students.
That's very difficult on you, but that way you can make sure that each student is participating at the level that student needs to participate
Yeah.
in.
The problem with, two things. I think also often education says, like that old adage about travel, it's Tuesday, so it must be Belgium. So,
I've never heard that one. Explain that one to me.
well, you're on a tour,
Okay.
and you've got 1 week to see Western Europe. Mm-hmm. Today's Tuesday. It's Belgium.
Okay.
So-
Okay. Sticking to the schedule.
schedule, right.
So much so that you miss the scenery.
Yeah. And the other one is that I think a lot of educators at the upper levels, not in the schools, not the teachers, not in the trenches, but principals and on up to the state level, have a very difficult time of expanding their blinders.
Right.
When I first came, I lived in Madison for a couple of years before I moved to Rappahannock. And I had just finished my master's at the University of Massachusetts, and I had 60 hours towards my doctorate in 2 fields. I had it in human relations and cross-cultural education. And they were just starting up the junior college over in Warrenton, and they were looking for teachers. So I thought, I could probably teach a Western Civ course. And I presented all of my documents and 14 years in a classroom, da-da-da-da-da-da. They wouldn't give me a job because my graduate work was in 2 fields.
What?
Yes, exactly. What?
Then they just said that and left it at that?
That was it.
So you weren't focused enough. What happened to interdisciplinary education?
Oh, I don't know.
So we started this conversation. We went down this rabbit hole with the notion that I said, how does positive change occur?
Yeah.
And you said through education.
Right.
And so then we, dove into
Right.
the ephemeral pool of
education,
where we are at.
Education is so broad a subject. You say education, and you naturally go to a school because that's where you get educated. But it's much broader than that. And I was fortunate in a second private school that I taught at to take a bunch of kids, sophomores, juniors, and seniors, boys and girls, all races, and secede from the school for a semester. And
How did you manage that?
I browbeat them.
You brought your hammer and your anvil.
I didn't have it yet.
Mentally, though.
Mentally,
you had.
yeah. And we seceded from the school. And I mean, if they were taking 4th year French, they continued that, obviously.
Right.
But generally, we ate breakfast in the dining hall, and then we disappeared.
Where did you take them?
Oh, I took them on field trips, around a lot of nature walks, blindfolded trips, games. I played a lot of games with them, new games. I mean, we're not playing cards and tiddlywinks. We're playing games that allow you to sort out your values.
What kind of games?
Trust games.
Can you give me an example?
Climbing a wall.
How does climbing a wall?
Maybe you're scared of heights. Maybe it looks too big. Maybe you can't get over it. Maybe if you're sitting on the top, you don't know how to get down.
Okay.
I would take kids out in the winter, blindfold them, foot of snow. Then I'd push them all down in the snow, have them take their blindfolds off and look at the sky and the stars at night. Then I'd take them home and give them hot cocoa.
This is real life training here.
Yeah.
You don't separate education then into a separate category from life. Is that maybe the issue here that we're facing in our country, is the notion, like you said just a few minutes ago, when you think education, you immediately go to a school.
Right.
It's housed in a certain place. It's separate from everyday life. It's part of every day, but it's in its own box.
I've always thought the word discipline, when I was 5, my mother thought that I needed some discipline instilled in me.
Were you a naughty little knoll?
I don't know why she thought this. But anyway, she took me to the local riding academy, which was just opened. The instructor had been a colonel in the Tsar's Imperial Guard. He was a Cossack. And I can remember looking up at the colonel and my mother and the colonel and my mother, and each reassuring that the young gentleman was going to be in good hands. And I stayed with that man for 20 years and became a part of the family. His youngest son became my best friend.
And what do you mean you boarded there?
Sometimes,
Okay.
Spend the night, I learned to take care of the horses. I learned to cook spaghetti. I learned, we did summer jobs, high school jobs together.
Did you learn discipline?
I learned discipline with the horse. How to ride, how to not to fall off, how not to kill myself, how to take care of the horse, how to trust the horse when I didn't know. And that kind of responsibility given to a youngster, and it can be anything. It can be taking care of a cat, it doesn't have to be, or a cow, or 4-H, or any number of other things. Mine happened to be a horse from this strange talking man. So he threw me up on the horse. I didn't have any stirrups. I didn't have any stirrups until I could post with my knees.
But you were on a saddle or you were bareback?
I am on a saddle,
Okay.
Gripping with my knees.
Good exercise.
Yeah.
On multiple levels.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's a form of discipline. We're always talking about it, giving it to a younger person. Or you give rhubarbs in the winter, or to be regular, or you give something to them instead of making an opportunity for them to be partners in it and learn from it. And that was the wonder of growing up on a farm for me, that once I'd done my chores, I could go in any direction I wanted to. My mother would say, just be home by dark. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have idea number one where I was going.
I had a similar sort of upbringing.
We did have a big bell outside the kitchen door.
Is that the dinner bell?
Well, exactly. Yeah. And we each had a signal. Mine was 4 bells, so 1, 2, 3, 4. And if I heard it, I better come.
Were you the 4th child? How many kids?
Well, my younger sister and I was one actually of 4, but the two were much older.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you got 4 rings.
4 rings.
And
yeah.
did you
Yeah.
go running?
1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Yeah, I ran.
So growing up on a farm and then going and spending time with this family. What was the gentleman's name who taught you?
Colonel Boris Samsonov. I always called him Colonel.
Colonel.
Yeah.
So you got into this talking about discipline.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not just talking about discipline in the traditional sense.
No.
I feel like when people think discipline, they think, timeouts or,
Yes.
sit in the corner and think about what you've done.
Spare the rod and spoil the child.
Right.
Yeah.
That's not what we're talking
No.
about here. You're talking about developing a sense of self that involves caretaking others
And
and
yourself.
that interaction. Well, as you learn to take care
Yeah.
of others, right, you can learn to take care of yourself. How did that teach you to be a teacher?
It didn't teach me to be a teacher.
No?
It taught me to be myself. I didn't know how to teach. So when I was interviewed, the chairman of my department, he pushed the books across to me. I didn't have any choice in them, the textbooks. And then he said, did you ever serve in the Army? And I said, yes, sir. Did you ever drill any troops? Yes, sir. Good. Now don't smile for 2 weeks.
Did you follow that advice?
Well, I started to. I'd seen a lot of teachers get destroyed because they didn't know how to maintain discipline in the class. And once you get a raucous group of teenagers, boys or girls, once you've lost them, you've lost them.
They'll walk all over you.
Yeah, exactly. So I had to teach the football section of American history. Now, that's an unfair attribute, but the idea being that the football team wasn't they weren't the sharpest tacks in the box.
Okay.
So and they were rowdy. So I had to wait till the third period. So I was a little nervous by the third period, and I walked in, and they were sort of lounging, okay, teach us, and. So right away, I used my drill sergeant voice from having been in the Army and got them to sit up, shut up, and listen to me, and this is the way it was going to be. Any questions?
Did you have any questions? Nobody asked you.
Nobody asked me any questions. So, but once you had established that you were in control, then you had the whole field to play with. And I learned how to teach. So you have a lesson. How can I reach, as you were saying before, just because you're a sophomore doesn't mean you should learn algebra or are ready for algebra. So
Right.
Where are you in this? And with fewer students than usual, 10 or 15 students, you can do that. You by asking questions and hearing their answers, and then in the afternoon you're coaching them on the soccer field. And you see them in different ways. You see them in the dorm, and you learn how they are as human beings, and then you can start to teach. And always, they are responsible for their learning. I'm the teacher. I'm just a guide. I can't teach. I can't learn the material for them. I've already done that. So
Right.
How can I help you learn this? And what is it you need to learn? What's important in this?
How did you...
A lot of mistakes.
What do you mean by mistakes?
What are my mistakes?
Yeah, what do you mean by that?
Oh.
What kind of mistakes do you feel like it took for you to go,
Well, I started teaching the way I was taught. Okay, Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492.
right.
How useful is that? You will memorize the Bill of Rights. How useful is that? So gradually, instead of teaching to the book, I taught what the book is talking about, whether it was European history or so on. Here's a good example. So I walked in one day to a sophomore class, and it was around a seminar table. I don't know, 10 kids in it, 12 kids. And I said, okay, I'm going to go around. I'm going to ask each of you, what book are you reading outside of class? And so the first poor kid, he mentioned, well, Mr. Wood has a reading Shakespeare plays. And I jumped up on the table and I said, no, what are you reading for yourself? So get them outside. I had them keep journals. Now, or write letters to me. Said, I will not share anything with anybody that you write me. This is between you and me. I will write back to you. I will not share it. Write in your journal. Talk to yourself. What's going on for you?
Did you inspire the film The Dead Poets Society? Oh, Captain,
No.
My Captain.
That came along a little later.
But that's what I'm saying. Did
Yeah.
somebody see what you were doing?
Yeah. Well, I'm still friends with these kids.
Because obviously you
They're not
made a
kids,
great
no.
impact.
They're all 70s, in their 70s now. They're all retiring from their work.
So
Well-
now having the hindsight of a long life, like you were lucky to have, and sowing these seeds with these students, and now seeing their lives progress, that gives you an interesting perspective on on what role you played. How did you feel like your seeds turn out? Did they blossom? Did they?
Oh yeah, well, I think the ethos of the school. I mean, I was a rebel and teacher, and a lot of the faculty didn't like what I was doing.
Were you reprimanded?
Not in so many words, until I introduced a course on Russian history, and that was with the Cold War going on, and a number of trustees thought I was sorry.
A communist?
Worse, I was trying to indoctrinate the students.
Were you?
No, I wanted them to know my views, but it was my views. It was not necessarily their view. And so to encourage that give and take, why do you hold your view? Not what is your view? How can you support that view? I thought if that was our big adversary, we should know something about it. And so I introduced the course, and I did it with an English teacher. So we made a Russian studies class. They would read Russian literature, and they learned the history at the same time. And I would play Russian music and Russian poets reciting their poetry to get the feeling of the language and the passion and so on.
Yeah.
It was great.
It sounds fabulous. that was frowned upon, I take it,
Well,
during the Cold War.
A number of trustees felt it was inappropriate. I mean, and I was very active in the anti-Vietnam War at the time. And my phone was tapped, and the John Birch Society.
How did you know that your phone was tapped?
You pick it up and you hear the clicks on the other end.
What is... And the John Bird, go ahead with that.
The John Birch Society was a very conservative organization, and they went around sort of like the House Un-American Activities Committee at that time, where people would be blackballed for their beliefs and so on.
So, your work in blacksmithing, what inspires you? You've done how many pieces now? Rounds about? I mean, thousands?
Well, yeah, probably.
Yeah. Why?
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 Well, it's an expression of my art. It's an expression of the inner me. One answer. Another very practical is to earn money.
Have you had great success with it then? You've been
Well,
in quite a few different features,
I've been,
magazines, and you've had pieces up at very, very popular places, very well-known places.
I've been blessed. When I started, I didn't know how to make a hook, just a simple hook. And I'm stubborn, and I love to learn, and I learn from books. And so between practice, stubbornness, books, I taught myself to do it. And each time I would get a commission, I would try to find something new to do in that commission. A new leaf, a different way of putting something together, a different whatever. So I got sort of on-the-job training. I couldn't charge for that part because it would always take it more time than it should if I just did it the old way. But that's how I kept growing.
And challenging yourself as an artist. When did you get your first commission for a piece of artwork?
The earliest one I remember is a doctor was retiring after years, and they had a party and they wanted to give him a gift. And what they decided on, the knockers they have to hit below your knee to test your reflexes?
Yeah.
I made one out of iron that was 2 feet long. That's the first thing I remember. I don't know, probably hooks, for fireplace tools. I've done a lot of fireplace tools.
When did you become known practically as a blacksmith? You're self-taught, you're working on your own. When did you, come out to the world and start featuring yourself as an artist?
Well, very early on, I did a lot of, I was living in Western New England at that time in the Berkshires, and I did a lot of town fairs in the fall. And everybody would come along and say, "Oh yeah, my father was a blacksmith." And I say, "Can you teach me something? Can you share something?" And one of the first ones I remember is I had a little hammer, a light hammer, and he said, "You might get a heavier hammer." Well, that was pretty good advice, So it was a matter of setting goals and then doing them, But I realized I knew that I wanted to do gates, architectural ironwork, gates, railings, balconies, stuff like that. And they're really nothing more than a series of pieces, often multiples, and putting them together in a pleasing way. And so that's what I did.
Why did you want to focus on architectural pieces?
I don't know. It's big. It's a challenge. It's the gates. If you look at European ironwork, the gates were always important pieces for the town or the church. Or as we talk, I'm looking up at the picture of the major gate I did for the National Cathedral, and that has 250 leaves in it. It has, I can't quite remember, it has 48 different flower centers. It has, numbers of rivets, and all the rivet heads are decorated differently. So there's a richness to it, and there's a history to it, back to my studying history. And I have to research all that. I have to learn from that. So I'm not just learning about the iron. I'm learning about a society, a way of life, a time in history, who was alive, what did they do that was different. I began building up a library of blacksmithing books so I could research all this. So I really haven't left the classroom. I switched it, that's all.
Moved it to the forge. Have you considered writing your own book?
I've written 2 books.
What are the names of those books?
One is, I can't remember, something, it's a book of my work. I'll think of it in a minute. The other work was a much broader interest. It was called Beauty in the Shadows, and it's about all the ironwork in the National Cathedral. They have one for the carvings, they have one for the stonework, they have one for the needlers, needlepoint, they have one for the stained glass, and they never had one for the ironwork. So
you decided to put that book together.
Yeah, and I got some wonderful helpers on that. Some of them did the photographs, research, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, really 4 of us put it together, but I did the writing for it.
But they're all books centered around the pieces.
Yes.
not so much your journey, your autobiographical.
Well, the introduction to the cathedral book talks about that. I've written a lot of articles for given talks, given demonstrations. I gave the commencement address at the College of Building Arts in Charleston this year.
I read that.
Oh.
That was it gave me goosebumps. It was very inspiring. It was a rebel with a platform.
Yeah, exactly.
But in that you spoke about you didn't have the resources that many students now, I mean, were there schools of blacksmithing when you started?
There were a few places where you could go study metal. It wasn't necessarily blacksmithing. It might have been sculptural work, pourings, castings. Often it was jewelry.
What makes so what's the distinction?
If you study metals, it's the whole spectrum.
Right.
It goes from jewelry to sculpture to castings, mold making, anything that's involved with metal. So you do the jewelry is small blacksmithing. Albert Paley, who's really well known as a blacksmith, started as a jeweler. I mean, he would make big chest pieces that would outlandish, but then he took it and he makes them now. So he did the Houston Opera House, monumental structures.
Wow.
And then really an arts and craft movement set into this country after the Second World War. And it started with pottery, very big on pottery. Most state universities now started, in addition to fine arts, they did a pottery. Alfred in New York is perhaps the most famous. And then finally, in the 70s, in the Back to the Land movement of the hippies, and the Whole Earth catalog, did you ever remember that?
I
No?
don't remember it.
Yeah.
Now I have to go and find it.
Yeah.
Do you have any copies?
I do. I think I have 2 copies.
Really?
Yes, I ordered a lot of books for my classroom for it,
Okay.
because it showed the breadth of what you can do.
Unknown caller.
It's okay.
So people moving back to the land, and out of that came a lot of people went back to the land from their professions, and they would just either burn out. I know a scientist of the ocean. I can't think what he does, what the name of it is, and he made articulated lobsters, so that their tails move, or crabs and their legs all move out of iron.
How fun.
Yeah, exactly. And there were no rules in ironwork. So you'd go to a junkyard, because we were phasing out of the Industrial Revolution, and we were going into technical things. Much more, you take a computer and design it instead of brown paper and a pencil.
You still use brown paper. I see.
I stay with brown, yeah. I can change it easier than I can in the computer, which just shows my computer illiteracy. But it also looks more like iron when I draw it.
It's closer to the actual material.
Yeah, well, when I draw a straight line, it's not straight, it has a little, but if you draw a straight line on computer, it's dead straight. Unless you try to make a curve, or unless you try to make a diagonal, then it's a dash, 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 dash.
So the computer is too perfect
Yes.
for the metal.
Yeah.
It doesn't reflect the actual bending and shaping that takes place.
When I'm doing a gate for the National Cathedral, I take in a drawing, a scale drawing, then I make a watercolor rendering of that same drawing, then I make a sample piece like you see up on the wall, and I take that in, and with that I get a price. I give them a contract price, and if they can't be convinced, yay or nay, by those three elements. They're in the wrong job.
You talked about the movement back to the land
Yep.
after people being burnt out. Is that what you did when you said you
Yep.
moved to Madison, and then
Yep.
how did you come to Rappahannock?
The burning out started earlier, and I went back and I bought a farm
Okay.
in the Berkshires. I had been nurtured by a farm as a kid, so I went back and I worked the farm. I got a cow, raised pigs, chickens, I tapped maple trees in the winter for sap. I read a lot, just to put my body back together, my soul back together. And that's where I blundered into blacksmithing. That's where I lit my first fire. We moved to Madison, Virginia, because my wife's parents lived in Madison, Virginia. And it was a lot cheaper to live in Virginia than it was in Massachusetts. The expenses were a lot less.
Yeah.
So I lived in Madison we moved down on July 3rd, 1976. On July 4th, 1976, I did my first street fair in Rappahannock down on May Street.
Time is a funny thing.
And that's where I met Jeannie Drevis. I started up my fire, smoke going all over the place. It went right off my forge, right around the corner, and into Jeannie's tent. And she came roaring out, "Who's me? All that smoke." And as I say, we've been friends 40 years since.
So she forgave you for
Yeah.
once she saw what talent you had, what you were doing.
She saw that I wasn't mean. I wasn't doing this on purpose. And,
Well, you were doing it on purpose, but you were not trying
not to get it in her tent. Yeah.
You can't control what the smoke does.
Yeah, wind. And so I didn't like Madison. It wasn't. I found the hippies were going on here and much more congenial. I felt more congenial. So I moved north in 1982, and I lived in a 2-story house, one room over another, and then built a house, and I've been here ever since. Not in that house. I've been in a new house, newer house.
Do you consider yourself a hippie?
No, I was too old to be, but I liked the freedom. I liked the idea that you could control your destiny. I like the idea of having more open friendships, of not being stuck in your box so much that you could bust out. Control your life, that you were in charge of your life, and not so much by where you came from, who you were, who your friends were, who your parents were, how long you'd lived X places, or so on.
Do you feel like you have controlled your destiny? You said that's what you like about the sort of bohemian hippie movement. Or that you've listened to your destiny. I guess that destiny, the word itself kind of implies that
yeah, I've certainly been, because of what I chose to do for my life's work, I've certainly chosen that part, and I like that I've chosen it. I'm coming to the end of that physically, because it's just too hard anymore, and so I don't know what I'm going to do for the next period, of the last period, and that's my challenge now. I would like to think that it was a really conscious decision to say, it certainly was to go back to the farm after teaching, because I was really burned out. I was exhausted. And I was still doing my doctorate work at UMass, and so sort of put myself together and wiggle my toes in dirt, once again. And then, so I chose blacksmithing, and it sort of chose me. because I really liked it and I could do it. And then I got good at it. And then I could build a house because of how I got paid for it. And I was so lucky in the jobs I got. I mean, obviously I had something to do with that, but you know, I've met some wonderful people in the blacksmithing community. I have friends all over the world in the blacksmithing community, and I've been in it long enough now so that you know, I talk to friends in England and Thailand and all across the United States for it, and it's given me a really interesting life. And I've been so well rewarded by my clients who come to me and want. Now they often give me free rein. We'd like something to go there. And so I have to come up with the design that fits there. And so that takes me into my head and the challenge of it. So it's really been very fulfilling. There are parts of my life, of course, that I'm not so proud of, not so pleased with myself, how I responded.
I think everybody has those parts.
I think so. I'm trying to learn to love myself about those, accept myself that I did that, accept responsibility, and move on. But I think everybody faces a little bit of karma, or a lot of karma, one way or another. So.
Are you a Buddhist?
No, I don't have enough discipline to be a Buddhist.
You didn't get it from the Colonel?
That was a different discipline.
But you definitely subscribe to the notion of karma.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
The transfer of energy and the movement of that.
You're right.
Do you think you built up some good karma with all your work and time you invested with with teaching?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that was a really important period in history. It was a really important period of mine and in my own development. What I really like is I didn't buy into the line of how you should do it, and that I charted my own course. And the kids I taught, where they are now, what they've done with their lives, I take some credit for that.
Rightfully so. Do you think that now that, I mean, it's sad to say, but you've mentioned that blacksmithing, you're kind of coming to the end of that journey. Do you think that you will ever go back to teaching?
Well, certainly not in the same way, because
right.
I will tell you, I have this recurring dream of going to, not the superintendent, but the head of school, let's say, principal, and saying, okay, it's the start of a new semester. Give me your 6 worst students, and I'll see you at the end of the semester.
I think that sounds like a very exciting proposition.
I don't know how public we should make this, but...
Well, you haven't named any names or which school you would go to.
Yeah.
But you know, little dreams that tug and pull at your subconscious, you probably already know, are not to be ignored.
You know, the exciting thing of working with learners at any age is that they've chucked the filter aside, at least partially, in order to learn. And so you don't have to, you do sometimes have to break through that barrier, but learners at any age are there because they're thirsty. And that moment, that spark, when they have a question and you have help for that question, that's the most exciting thing after the concept of life happening.
That's very well put, very eloquent of you to say. Would you consider providing, do you teach classes in blacksmithing?
I have. I've taught all over the country, but I don't do it anymore because it's exhausting. And I know my reserves. I will answer any question, but I won't take anybody on.
You won't take anybody on? So no apprentices,
Not anymore.
but you've had apprentices.
Yes.
And you still keep in touch?
Nope.
No?
No. Not with my apprentices, but with my students and teaching, yes.
Why not with the apprentices?
And small disagreements.
You're very strong-willed. I can tell that it's, between you and the iron, I think you might be harder.
I'm a Yankee. I'm half Yankee, actually. Half Virginian, half Massachusetts.
You've naturalized now that you've been in Virginia.
That's right, yeah.
So what is next? You are going to participate in the Fall Art Tour.
Yes, I am.
Is that going to happen the first weekend of November?
First weekend of November, yeah.
Okay. So everybody can see you in here.
Yeah, they come in and see me hammer out stuff. I'll do some demonstrations, and I hope I'll have enough stuff and somebody will want to buy things. One thing I'm doing this year is I've got a lot of drawings, and I'm framing a number of them and will have them for sale. Like you see here, cleaner.
They don't look dirty to me. Are they not clean?
Well, there's a lot of grit on the table.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I've got file cabinets and drawings from 40 years, so.
I want to see those in a book.
Yeah, well, I'll show you some in there. I've got some in there.
Excellent. Well, thank you for your time.
It was a pleasure.
Noel Putnam.
$1,000 given by your love is 1,000 reasons why. There's 1,000 things I could put in this box, but I'll leave it empty for the limitless possibilities. And oh, won't you keep it open? Oh, won't you let it change? Yeah. Oh, won't you keep it all open? And oh, won't you let it change? Yeah. There's $1,000 couldn't buy your love. There's 1,000 reasons why. Yeah. There's 1,000 things I could put in this box, but I'll keep it open for the limitless possibilities. And oh, you keep it all open. Oh, you let it change. Oh, you keep it all open. Oh, you let it change. Yeah.